Larry, this week, the number one topic of conversation for the last several days has been all around some Lisa Cook lady who clearly should be stepping down from the Fed, as she clearly has admitted now that she's either really stupid or fraudulent, one of the two.
I mean, it's not a good look for one of the most senior banking executives in the nation to have screwed up on two mortgage applications in a very serious way. Some may say criminal way, but that's not for us to judge. But still, we know whatever she did was not permissible.
Right.
And she's a banking. Now, if you or I had done that, I don't think we would have been given second chances.
They'd be calling the loan. They
Oh, yeah.
they might be criminally going after us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so her claim today, though, was, whoops, it was a clerical error. And I've done about 10 mortgages in the last 10 years, Larry, because we had the three houses and we refinanced them a couple of times. And when the guy comes out and takes you through, he says, this is under penalty of perjury. And I want to really read this section for you very clearly because this is a really important section. I mean, I don't know. Maybe she had somebody come out and take her through it in a different way, but that's her signature.
It's not a good look. It's not a good look for a Federal Reserve Bank. And when you think about the number of people that have been debanked in this country in the last 5 years, I'm sure nobody's been debanked this year, but
Yeah,
if,
right.
but if you go 4 years, for the 4 years of the Biden administration, just the sheer number of people that were debanked, I mean, it's incredible. It's just incredible. And, there it is. She's privileged, I guess. She's above all of that. And to plead a clerical error is to actually debase the basis of the whole law that, she's there sworn to protect. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to be all about the Fed today.
Okay.
And let's start with the good news. All right. So the good news is that the Atlanta Fed, of course, puts out a GDP report, usually every 2-3 days, depending on their mood, I guess. I don't know. Sometimes it's in 2 days, sometimes it's in 4 days. Anyway, but the latest estimate came out today. They raised their estimate for the third quarter from 2.2%. Are you ready, Larry? To 3.5%. Now, if you'll give me a second to read the rest of it, because it just gets better and better. The GDP Now model estimate for real GDP growth, seasonally adjusted, in the third quarter is 3.5%. After recent releases from the U.S. Census Bureau and the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, the nowcasts of third quarter real personal consumption expenditures growth and the second quarter real gross private domestic investment growth increased from 2.2% to 4.4%. And to and for the second one, for the sentence is so badly done, I should have redone this. So the personal consumption expenditures was from 2.2 to 4.4, and the personal consumption expenditures from 2.3 to 6.1%.
No, you said personal consumption expenditure twice.
Twice. And the third quarter real personal consumption expenditures was the first one, 2.2 to 4.1. And the second quarter real gross private domestic investment growth grew from 2.3 to 6.1.
Well, that's the big surprise. So the consumption growth, they say, is people pulling forward their purchases because of the tariffs. They've been saying that for like 8 weeks now. I don't buy any of it. But the investment increment is exactly what the big, beautiful bill was all about. It's exactly what Trump predicted would happen. It's exactly what Trump and Beisel planned to happen. And so this is a absolute vindication of the approach of the policy. So, hooray, Trump.
Ray Trump is right. So if we can get a 3.5 print now, obviously we're a long way from getting the first print. That won't happen until October sometime.
Yeah.
But if we came anywhere close to 3.5 in October, this would be a huge, huge thing. We are not.
By the way, it's going to have a real impact on our deficit.
Yes, 100%. Yes. So what I started thinking about, Larry, was this whole business of the Fed. I started thinking about, and I posted a couple of days ago, I said, look, I've been kind of agnostic when it comes to the Fed. Like, yeah, they probably do some good, but yeah, sometimes they don't seem to be doing that much good. And then there became this back and forth, people that I respect, some saying, oh, the independence of the Fed is really important. And other people saying, well, maybe the independence is not all that big of a deal. So let me just let you go for a minute without any of my input. And then I have a few questions. What do you think about the independence of the Fed? What do you think about the Fed in general?
Well, the Fed is a problem child, and I'll tell you why it's a problem child. There is a very good argument to be made, and is made, for an independent central bank. A good argument. The problem is the argument fails when you consider that we are supposed to be operating a government according to the Constitution of the United States of America. And nowhere in that Constitution, nowhere do I read anything about an independent agency. Certainly nothing about an independent central bank. I have a huge problem with these independent agencies, huge problem. I don't find anywhere in the Constitution. So I see three principal arms of the state, three central organs, three central components of the state.
Right.
There's Article 1, the President of the United States. Article 2, the Congress of the United States. Article 3, the courts, the Supreme Court, and other courts as are established by the Congress. I see nowhere the creation of an independent body like this commission or that commission, FCC, the SEC, these bodies that call themselves, quote, independent commissions, unquote, I think are all unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not trying to rewrite the Constitution,
Right.
And I'm trying to overturn, decades or generations
Right.
of established precedent, and I think it would be wrong. But I do think that these are non-constitutional entities and that we've twisted ourselves into a pretzel to create them. And that was one of the biggest problems that this court, the Supreme Court, challenged in many of these so-called administration courts and many of these policies that many of these agencies of state under the president established. Now, if those were illegal, and they were found to be illegal, that at least, those courts were at least established by bodies established by the president under his management control and his authority. The independent court or the independent federal loan, what was that federal body? Elizabeth Warren's commission.
The credit
Consumer Protection Bureau.
Yeah.
And all of these independent bodies, in addition to the Federal Reserve Bank, are, in my view, unconstitutional.
Okay, now let's assume that, as you point out, we're probably not going to completely get rid of them, and maybe we shouldn't. What would you think? What do you think in terms of the Fed's efficacy?
Well, so if you look historically at the volatility in the banking system before the establishment of the Federal Reserve and after the establishment of the Federal Reserve, there's no doubt at all that the modern era under the Federal Reserve was far less volatile than the era before the Federal Reserve. So in that respect, you have to accept, you have to accede to the reality that the Federal Reserve has done some good.
Okay. All right.
Having said that, there are periods in where the Federal Reserve did terribly. Now, not entirely their fault, not entirely their fault.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if you look at the era of Nixon, Nixon is the one that overturned the gold standard.
Right.
So the Federal Reserve Bank was handed, a really hot potato, a very difficult situation. But what they did is they pumped money, cash into the economy at an incredible rate. And so, by the time, Ford had come and gone and Carter came, we got to a point where, the pumping was out of all control. It should be said that a president could have done the same bad thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it should also be said that, if you go back to before the time of the creation of the Federal Reserve, things were equally volatile. But nonetheless, there's a case where the Federal Reserve got out of control in a not dissimilar fashion to the way it got out of control after COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Two things happened after COVID. The federal government went berserk and printed money out of all proportion. Trump did it to save people. He was forced to do it. He did it. He realized it would be bad, and he was going to clamp down afterwards. Unfortunately, he didn't get reelected.
Mm-hmm.
And Biden, taking the note out of Barack Obama's book, decided to go berserk and raise, enormous amounts of expenditure. Not raise, but
mm-hmm.
incur enormous amounts of expenditure. And Congress went along with him.
Yeah.
And so the Federal Reserve was placed into a very, very difficult position and had to clamp down. And that frightened the heck out of them. So they didn't manage that situation very well. They didn't manage that situation. They overreacted, and they've still to solve, this up and down bouncing of the economy. So how to score them? They were placed, how to deal with the issue of, is the Federal Reserve the right thing to have? Well, the answer is, it was righter than what we had before. There was no federal, but it's far from perfect, and it's done some very imperfect things.
All right, so let's talk about the independence aspect then. Let's break it down. So let's start with independence. Can a Fed have almost 100% of its members voting and otherwise almost 100% of its employees coming from one party and actually be independent?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There is no question that the bureaucracy became politicized under Barack Obama and this Biden presidency. It wasn't a Biden presidency. It was this clique presidency. It was a putsch.
Yeah.
It was a putsch by this clique. So, and it was Barack Obama's presidency. So 12 years of 8 years of Barack Obama, 4 years of Trump, and then 4 years of Barack Obama's clique. The bureaucracy during this period of time became politicized, highly politicized. And so, yeah, I think that it's fine for the Federal Reserve to be independent, but I do believe that the president should have a clean sweep of the governors in a much shorter period of time, because clearly, you know, we've got problems in the politicization of the bureaucracy. I'm hoping that we'll see by the end of the Trump administration this politicization come to an end.
Yeah, all right. So if you wanted to be independent, should it be able to be actually a contrary organization to the current president, or should there be some way of creating something where there is cooperation if there's still independence? So that might be, for instance, that the president has a vote, or the Secretary of the Treasury has a vote, or that there are outside voters that are nominated by the president, maybe some kind of a business leader, something in order to create, again, I think it makes no sense if the president has a vision of an economy, a vision of how to manage the money, the amount of money in circulation, et cetera, has a vision of what to do, and his Treasury Secretary, et cetera, have a vision of where they want to go. If the Fed can sit there and try to undo that vision as faster than the administration can do the vision, and they're not even elected, they're appointed.
Yeah. You know, we should think about it this way, that every cabinet official, secretary, every cabinet secretary, I guess called in this company, I was going to call it cabinet minister, but every cabinet secretary is in her own right independent by definition.
Right.
I mean, they act independently, they report to the president, but just like any executive takes their own initiative within the policy parameters set by their boss. It seems to me quite permissible that you could have a treasury with the controlling instruments that the current Federal Reserve Bank has. See, if you go back in history and you say, well, when the Federal Reserve was established, that's when things became quiescent. It wasn't that it was independently operated that things became quiescent. It was that we had a single banking control managing the banking system, as opposed to many, many different banks operating freely and, becoming a herd of sheep going one way or the other, driving us into extremes. So I'm thinking to myself, let the Treasury Secretary be the chairman. That's his job, after all. That's his bloody job. He should be managing that position. And then the Federal Reserve can still apply its controls over the banks. It can still apply monetary authority over the banks. The Treasury Secretary can still stand up to the president and say, Mr. President, that's a good policy, but unfortunately it's going to have this impact, and we don't want to do that to the economy. Is there another solution we can do to implement your policy? So I think we're mixing two things up. We really are confusing the issue of independence with banking controls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, we'll have this president from this party, and then we'll have a president from that a secretary from this party, a secretary from that party, and they will each have different policies and they'll pull in different directions. it has happened in the past. You know, the big difference right now is that the Fed chairman, his term crosses presidential terms.
Mhm.
That's the big differential rather than anything else. The other differential is this independence, which is completely non-constitutional. And I think it's wrong. So I would argue that the Treasury Secretary should be the chairman of the Federal Reserve. I think the governance of the Federal Reserve is just fine. You know, we have these separate banks. We have the bank representatives. We have, you know, bank ownership or ownership by the principal banks. All of that's fine, and that's a very good system. But this notion of independent agencies has to disappear. We have to say to the Supreme Court, guys, you are not doing your jobs. Your job is to implement the Constitution, and here we have all of these unconstitutional activities that have to come to an end.
Okay, so now let's talk about a little bit of the details. So we know that we've got the BLS undergoing the Bureau of Labor Statistics undergoing a radical change with a new, hopefully AJ and Tony coming in. I think AJ and Tony coming in. By the way, he got a huge vote of confidence from Laffer the other day.
Yeah,
Laffer
and for good reason, and for absolutely good reason.
Yeah, so I was glad to see that. It looks like he will be heading it up. We have a Fed who I would argue is probably just as outmoded and outdated with regard to their methods of acquiring data.
Yes, yeah, that's true.
And then you have to ask the question, why do we have 17 different agencies acquiring data? We have the census acquiring data. We have the BLS acquiring data. We have just go down the line. Everybody's got their own way and their own methods of getting data.
Mm-hmm.
With the new world of AI and the new methods of getting data, which are being shown to us by Truflation, they're showing us how you can do daily. I mean, actually, to a certain extent, you got the Atlanta Fed showing us that they're pulling together almost daily data for this GDP now. So maybe there should be one secretary in charge of data.
Let me push back against that.
Okay, all right.
You don't want that.
Okay.
I mean, we have several agencies that we've made in charge of something, and they have this overall, and it becomes a disaster. They become big, they become their own bureaucracies, and then their function has to be somehow repeated in these agents, in these departments themselves, in these major departments. So you have multiple layers. I mean, I can remember I was involved in helping the government CIO in designing the architecture, and they went about and created this architecture. And you know, there was this whole thing about architecture, you know, enterprise architecture. So every department had its enterprise architecture, and the overall government created enterprise architecture, and every other. Each of these departments had to adapt to sort of use that enterprise architecture. And they all found it wasn't quite exactly what it is a nightmare. It's just another layer, because every department will still be the ones collecting the data and managing the data. And honestly, I think the closer you can get to the client, the better off you are. And sometimes it does well. Now, should there be data standards? Yeah, to a degree there should be. Should there be a CIO who provides advice and support and resources to these departments? Yes. So you can provide standards, you can provide methods, and you could also provide centralized resources, such as, you know, a functioning data science department to provide, you know, some sort of help. But these massive centralized functions, I've never seen them work. Not that these decentralized functions work that great either. You know, I mean, I can tell you horror stories. I've probably told you horror stories about our work at the IRS. I mean, holy moly, what a mess. I mean, they paid us a lot of money and I appreciate it. But you know what? I would prefer not to have earned all that money and not to have learned just how bad our government really is at managing our money.
So a lot of our data, Larry, is also surveys. And I'm my undergraduate I had a psych degree, but it was heavily sociology. I loved surveys. I think it's so much fun. I do all kinds of polling here. I love to see what Gallup has to say, et cetera, and especially Rasmussen, who's the most accurate pollster out there. I think it's all wonderful, but the stock market is making decisions today based on the consumer sentiment survey, which is 600 people who they're talking to, consumers. They're not even business people. They're not special consumers. They're just consumers. And out of those 600 people, they're making decisions about the direction of the economy. And I'm wringing my hands right now because it's so evident that right now with this country that's so divided, the Democrats that they're talking to are saying the economy's in the toilet, and the Republicans that they're talking to are saying that it's the best economy since the beginning of the
yeah, and they're Democratic pollsters, so they ask Democrats the questions.
So it's like,
I mean, the truth of the matter is so many of these problems would go away if our bureaucracy was not so politicized.
Yeah. So
it's highly politicized.
I'm wondering if you and I are king and we get to reorganize the Fed and reorganize the BLM, should we be getting more hard data instead of these surveys?
Absolutely. We should be getting data for which there's absolutely no, means of messing it. And we should publish the raw source. I mean, the raw source is so important. Look, the Federal Reserve does a really good job of stress testing the banks.
Yeah.
They get raw data from the banks.
Yeah.
They put that data through my technology, and they come up with answers on the stress to the banks. Now, it's true that some of the tests they do are probably off target. I have no doubt. I have no doubt at all. But by and large, those tests are based on real nuts and bolts data coming from real banks. And there's no reason why the Federal Reserve, by and large, at a technical level, is an outstanding organization. That's why I would never get rid of the Federal Reserve. Fred is an incredible resource. I don't know what Fred,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, Fred.
It's an incredible resource. And it's
St. Louis, the St. Louis Fed.
St. Fed, yeah. And their numbers are really, really, really accurate. Really. It's very seldom that Fred will say, oh, we made a mistake. It's very seldom. And those numbers track year after year, and some of them go back 100 years.
Yeah.
So, there's no reason why each government department shouldn't have really good information and really good knowledge. But as you say, surveys that encompass 600 people and make decisions on economic, on the economics of the country as a whole, it's crazy. It's crazy.
So, oh, darn, it just went out of my head. Oh, yes. So do you think there's any chance that 420 PhDs in the Fed is 419 too many?
Listen, I have a lot of respect for the PhDs in the Fed. A lot of respect because, dear friend of mine from early in my youth he's retired, was a PhD in the Fed. We shouldn't hold their PhDs against them.
Okay, should we hold the fact that the PhDs are what's wrong with me? PhD in what's wrong?
Economics.
That's I couldn't get my right syllable in the right place. I don't know what's going on. Okay. Yes, in economics.
It's called old age,
Yeah, no,
old man.
no. So should we hold that against him? Larry, I'm being a little bit facetious here, but small teams is kind of the word of the day.
I think there's 16 feds. Correct me if I'm wrong by the number. I think they're about
it's in that ballpark, 12 or 16, something in that range.
Maybe 12 is the right number. My age, I can't remember anything anymore. Well, that leaves about 35 PhDs per Fed. That's not bad. I mean, look, most of these PhDs are in science or in statistics and mathematics and related fields. So that's not too bad. I honestly don't think that it's the statistical guys that the problem. It's the economists that the problem. So to say that an economist is a scientist is a stretch of the imagination. It's kind of a soft science.
Yes.
And the words soft science are kind of, they don't make any sense at all. They're an oxymoron.
Yes.
And the moron is the guy who's the soft scientist.
Yeah.
So, they make it up as they go along. And so economists, there's some economists that I think are very well based, and some of them not that well based. And so we see that, you look at Paul Krugman. I mean, he's a Nobel economist. He has never got it right.
Ever.
He has never, ever got it right. You listen to his prognostications. I mean, he's published them.
Yeah.
He gets published. It used to be every week in the New York Times. I haven't read the New York Times in 10 years, so I couldn't tell you. But it used to be every week in the New York Times. And everything he said he got wrong. Everything. For which he got the Nobel Prize. I mean, God.
Now we know how you get it.
Now, if only Trump would start a war, he'd get the Nobel Peace Prize.
That's right. Maybe that's what he needs. So, all right. So I think I would be correct in saying that we agree that maybe Trump's suggestion that a reorganization of the Fed is in order. Maybe it would be wise to subtract one level of independence, meaning it's no longer actually an independent agent, but rather it is a division of the executive branch.
The Treasury.
Of the Treasury, right?
Yeah. Why is the Federal Reserve not under the Treasury?
Right.
Look, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency in the sense that it's a separate corporation.
Yep.
Managed by this board of directors, or what we call the board of governors.
Right.
And the governor, the chief, the governors are all appointed by the president, and they're drawn from the banks.
Right.
Why would the governor of the Federal Reserve not be the secretary of the Treasury? And then you regularized the Treasury according to the Constitution of the United States of America.
Yeah.
The Federal Reserve Bank cannot have federal powers unless it is part of the executive of the United States. Now, if you want to change the Constitution, that's fine. There is a procedure for that, and have at it, change it. You want to be into it, fine. But the President of the United States should not only appoint, but should have direct control. Not direct, but through the Treasury, Secretary of Treasury, control of the Federal Reserve. And that is a good buffer. The Secretary of Treasury has always had a degree of seniority. He's the most senior official in the department, in the government. Mm-hmm. And as such, he has a degree of independence from the president.
Well, Larry, so the Fed is going to make a decision on the 17th of this month.
Yeah.
With regard to cutting the rates. Everybody and their third cousin, every single person believes that they're going to cut at least a quarter. We've had a couple of Fed governors or presidents come out in the last couple of days saying they think it should be 50. But those are people who are running for the chairmanship. so they might be in the minority. We have three significant pieces of information coming between now and that date, and that would be the labor numbers next Friday, and then the CPI and PPI, I think the week after that. Any chance at all that the Fed backs off and doesn't give us a cut at all?
There's every chance.
Okay.
The Fed chairman could say, guys, the economy is going great guns at this interest rate. Let's hold the position, because what we don't want is a runaway, growth. Why would he not say that?
Okay, so that's you're saying he could go that direction.
Yeah, and did not say he would. I'm saying he could, and it all depends on how badly he wants to stick it to the president.
People talk about the pressure that he's getting from the president, but what about the pressure he's getting from Wall Street? I mean, I can't believe that he's divorced from Wall Street. All of them have to be hearing from their friends, their associates.
What does he care?
Well, he's only one person, but with all of them, he's saying he doesn't care about his legacy. He doesn't care about what people say to him at cocktail parties. What?
Well, just deal with the logic of my argument.
Yeah.
Why would he not say, look, things are going great? Let's not disturb the apple cart. We've got good growth going and we don't have inflation. So let's keep it this way. What would you say to that?
Well, what I would say to that is that the guy who has not been along on this ride for the last 40 years has been the working poor and the middle class. And they're the ones that are going to benefit from the Fed cutting the rates, as well as the regional banks, which have also been really undermined, especially the last 6 years.
So you're right. I mean, that is an argument, and the interest rates what we're doing is pushing interest rates up globally. He would argue that bring the interest rates down, the dollar will fall. He could see multiple different negative impacts from it. So I'm not saying he will do that, but he could do that if you really wanted to stick it to this president, which may be what's motivating him. I can't read whether he's operating in good faith or not. I just can't.
Yeah, it is hard. It is hard to read.
The record does not read well. I mean,
No.
Trump is absolutely right that he dropped the interest rates just before the election and then hiked them didn't hike them, but kept them.
Continue, yes.
And so, the evidence is not great. And the fact that he did that, got Trump really angry, and that in turn feeds back into more anger in response. And so,
and then if you go back,
but you're right about one thing, by the way. The overriding fact is that he may be voted down, and the last thing he would want to be is the first Fed chairman in history to be voted down by his own board. So it's quite possible that is the ultimate factor in this whole weighing of the different factors.
Now, no human being should be, responsible for their past words, but his past words were, "I'm not lowering the rates because of my fear about what tariffs are going to do." But I remember it as like it was yesterday. He then said, "Though tariffs are really price, and so unless the tariffs themselves cause the beginning of actual inflation, they are not in themselves inflation." That's what he said. I believe that would have been the April meeting, is when he said that, right after all the tariff, Independence Day. Then later on, he starts
He
forgetting.
has to be concerned about tariffs, about the price impact of tariffs. And so he doesn't want to do anything until the tariff thing plays out. So
Then he says,
exactly the opposite of what he said at the first meeting. Yeah.
and then he says, we will know by summer whether the tariffs are having an impact. Well, summer's over. The tariffs have not had an impact. We had all the small stores, when I say small stores, the big box stores come out in the last week with their earnings, and all of them said, nope, no big deal on the tariffs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we can make this argument all day long, but he marches to his own drum. The only thing is, I think that his board are probably close to bailing on him because they, May next year, they move on, they carry on, and he's gone.
Right.
So the power is waning. These are the end days, end times for him. Maybe he will be, dragooned into a decision that makes sense.
Maybe so. All right, Larry, let's take a quick look at the numbers. We know that we don't have any pre-market because it's Friday, but we'll take a look real quick at what happened today. Maybe you'll have a comment or a thought. We had the Dow and the NASDAQ and the S&P down in various amounts, kind of just a soft day. Are you anticipating that we are going to get that 5% correction in September before we go to the moon, or do you think we get through September without it?
Yes.
Yes. Tesla was down 3.5% today.
Oh, it's terrible.
It
was up 6 or 8% last week. So
yes.
What the hell?
Well, interestingly, here's something. I know that you say you're not paying attention to this stuff, but Tesla is now following NVIDIA. So now they've been in lockstep for 3 days. NVIDIA was also down 3.5 today. So all of a sudden now we actually believe that Tesla is the leading AI stock in their space, the
embodied
AI space. So now they're going to go with NVIDIA, however NVIDIA goes.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all.
Okay.
They may be embodied AI, but NVIDIA have got a whole lot of separate dynamics going on. Look, NVIDIA may be the most successful. They're certainly going to become the biggest. They are the biggest company on the stock exchange in the world. I think they're going to go on to greater heights before coming back to Earth. I'm not even sure they'll ever come back to Earth, but I'm not sure that they're going to keep this sizzling rate up. Although I have to say that I think they've got a good, at least 1 or 2 quarters of growth left, at least.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to see what their next product is and how that comes along. So I think NVIDIA is still a buy. I'm still, bullish on NVIDIA.
The bonds went down almost to 4.2. They were 4.20 something. And then they popped up a little bit today, unsurprisingly, a little bit of profit taking. But we're still at 4.23. Do we get a 3 handle in the next 30 days or 60 days?
I think 60 days you'll definitely have a 3 handle.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. Oil down $64 now. Nicholas Gibbs tells me that if it gets much lower, they'll start capping. They'll stop drilling, and they'll start pulling back in the United States. Is that kind of where you're thinking?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll probably stick in the 60s. Would that be fair?
Yeah. Let's see what happens to Russia. Look, Ukraine are really hammering the Russian oil industry. I mean, really hammering it. I think it's only just begun. I think they think this is their solution to get Putin to the table. So unless the Russians are able to find a solution right now, it doesn't seem that clear that they are. We could see oil. I mean, this is just the beginning. We
Yeah.
could see oil deliveries in Russia fall another 30, 40%, in which case they'll stop exporting. They'll
Right.
not be able to get the oil to the harbors.
Right.
So if they stop exporting, and particularly if the pipeline feeding the railheads to China are destroyed, China and India, we could we could see a turnaround in the oil situation quite dramatically.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think there is a fair amount of reserve in the world right now.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
But if Russia stops pumping, that reserve is going to start falling. There will be a change.
Okay. Natural gas has been flirting around with $3, but it is way back up from it was down as low as like 250. So
Yeah.
I think maybe we're starting to see some evidence of the winter planting. I don't know, planning. Did I say planting? Planning. Thinking about what they need for winter. Not sure. Gold, Larry. No. This is. I'm sorry. You're usually way better than this. But hopefully nobody bought gold because of Larry. We went up another $42 today. 3,516. Holy moly. And silver broke out also. The old high was 39.50. It's 40.26.
Could somebody explain that to me?
I don't know.
As if I'm what do they say? As if I'm in grade 7 or something.
Right.
As if I'm a 7-year-old. I mean, it doesn't add up, does it?
It is really odd. I mean, yes, you have the dollar down a little bit, so that would be part of it, but not that much. Silver's having a great run. Copper staying right it's a little bit higher, 451, but it's been between 440 and 450 for several weeks. Bitcoin, you ready? Down 3.87%, almost the same as NVIDIA and Tesla, down to 107.8. Yeah.
So does it get below 100,000?
I don't know, but this is kind of interesting that you've got, again, those three, NVIDIA, Tesla, and Bitcoin, all down, basically following one another right now. People have talked about Bitcoin being a leading indicator for the tech stocks.
I heard that, yeah.
Don't know. By the way, I've started quoting Ether each time because of Tom Lee. And I'm contemplating next May, Larry, making my first investment in some kind of crypto.
Yeah, so Tom Lee says Ethereum's the stock to be in. I've always thought Bitcoin to be, but they're two very different animals, really.
Right. Okay, so Ethereum was down 3% today at 4,327. And of course, no pre-market. So that is all we have, Larry, except for, of course, your wisdom for today.
Don't buy any shares in the Federal Reserve Bank. However, buy shares in Freddie and Fannie.
Oh yeah. You're all about them becoming a separate, a corporation.
Privatized. Yeah, I wish they'd get onto that quickly, because the last Trump administration, they ran out of time. Well, I guess the pandemic stopped them, but they were well on their way to privatizing those two companies, and they would do well by doing that. Anyway,
are both sides of the aisle on board?
No, but I think they would get a majority.
Okay. All right.
So sell Fred and buy Freddie Mac.
There you go. All right, Larry, with those wonderful words of wisdom, we will say goodbye until Monday. And to all of you out there, it has been great talking to you.